Well, I reckon I should be able to make a pretty decent pergola and carport out of these timbers. Well, that'll last for 1,000 years. Iron bark. Stay tuned. Soon to be. G'day everyone, welcome back. I'm Todd, this is ToXiC Garage Customs, and you're in my front yard at the moment. And I've got a special guest with me here at the moment, so I'll introduce you. This is Eddie. Say g'day, Eddie. Yep, that's about as much as you'll get out of Eddie, unless you're a piece of grass or a bucket of hay. That's it. This video is entirely different to any that you've seen from me before, and you're either going to love it, hate it, or not watch it at all. But that's up to you, because this is the video that I'm putting out. I haven't been doing anything on any cars for a couple of weeks, and the reason being is that I've been building that thing, and that's a pergola. You'll see in this video that I actually started doing this months ago, and in dribs and drabs I've been working on it, but for the last couple of weeks we've been intensely building it. That's a pergola, by the way. Let's have a look at it more closely. So that's it up closer, and it's not quite finished. It's very close, and you'll see through this video why it's not quite finished. But the purpose of it will be an outdoor sitting area. It will probably have plants growing over the top of it and become just a part of the landscape. We spend a lot of time outside and we eat outside a lot. So the idea is that this will be a place where we can just come and put our feet up in the middle of a hard day's work, or at the end of a hard day's work, crack open a cold adult beverage or a warm cuppa, whatever we want, and sit down and eat a sausage sandwich. So why don't you join me for the next however long this video is and see how I build that out of a pile of timber that I had milled. I'll see you at the end. But until then, why don't you go get yourself a cold adult beverage. Got our iron bark timber here. This is for a pergola that we're building. This thing is massively over-engineered. The timbers are enormous. They're 200mm or 8-inch posts. The beams are 200 by 75 and the rafters are 150 by 75, I think, from memory. It's going to be a big structure. This timber weighs heaps. Weighs about 1.2 tonne per cubic metre, so each one of these posts is close on 180 to 100 kilo. It's big. So it was cut with a Lucas mill in a saw yard, a timber yard, and it's actually got a really nice finish to it. It's actually, I'm not going to run the hand over it, but it's almost smooth enough to touch without getting splinters, but you get splinters. So I'm just running over it with my air sander with 80 grit paper, and that is actually the look I'm chasing. I still want to see the saw cuts, but I'm just very lightly sanding the corners and very lightly sanding over it. I'm not spending very long on each one of these at all, maybe a couple of minutes on each side. Then I'm going to be treating it with boracoll, I should say. It's a fungicide. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just being overly cautious because this is expensive timber. There's a lot of it, and I'm putting it straight in the ground. The reason I'm putting it straight in the ground is I don't want to have a structure that big sitting on stirrups. I just have concerns about the stability of it. So each post will be in the ground somewhere between 700 and 900 millimeters. So a lot of embedment. So I'm pretty sure it'll be solid. But this is iron bark, as I said. It's durability grade 1. And durability grade 1 timber should last in ground for around 25 to 30 years minimum. It's the highest durability timber you can get. So again, overkill. But I like to think if I'm building this structure in this way that this thing will be here long after I am. So I'm just taking all precautions. Now I want to enhance the grain later and enhance the colour. So I'll most likely be treating this with Lanatec, which is lanolin, yes, from sheep's wool. I've used it on other things, haven't used it directly on timber, but I hear very good things. But I will make sure that that is what I want to do. But that is the structure. It's going to be a very basic structure, massively overkilled, as I said. I probably could have built a pergola 5 times the size of this with smaller timbers. and got a much bigger pergola, but this is what I want. This is going to be a key feature of the front of our house. And also, I'm going to be widening this carport, and when I do that, I'm going to be replacing these treated pine posts with the same posts that I have there. So there'll be a post there, there won't be one there, but there will be one over there. So it'll be a big chunky carport, and then right there, there'll be a big chunky pergola. And in time, they may be linked together. Onward and upward, people. Well, you might think that all I ever do is work on cars. The reality is I do a lot more than that. Got a few acres here, and we got animals and got a lot of lawn, and I'm also doing landscaping and some home improvements. So while that's not what this channel is about, and while I'm not going to change the content of my channel for that, thought I'd just show you what I'm doing today, because it is a little bit different. I'm still working on the Datsun, but I've had to move it so I can do this. So what we have is I've moved Doris the Datsun back a bit. Sam's working on his bike. He's got the back wheel off it, and it might have fallen over a little bit, but it hasn't damaged anything and it's not falling anymore, so we'll leave that there. I've moved the Commodore over to here. Hopefully it doesn't get too excited because it's not getting any love just at the moment. Had to move Audrey out of the way, ToXiC out of the way. But what I'm working on is this piece of timber. And this piece of timber is massive. It's over 6 meters long, and it is 200 mil by 70 mil, which is what, 8 inch by 3 inch. It's iron bark, so it's extremely heavy. It's wet in the middle because it's raining. It's been pouring. In fact, when I'm making this video tomorrow, Cyclone Alfred is supposed to make landfall in Queensland and northern New South Wales. So my best wishes to everyone there. I hope things don't pan out as badly as they're supposed to. While there's no rain, this is what I'm doing. I'm building this pergola over here. So I've got some scaffolding there, elevated work platforms that I've been working on, and I've been preparing the top of these posts. Now I'll give you an idea of how big these posts are. They're same size as my hand. So they're pretty chunky big things. So what I'm doing is I've notched or housed the top of the posts here, and what I'm about to do is do some work on that big timber, that beam that's going to run from there across to there, and then there'll be one on the other side, and then later on there'll be a bunch of rafters that go through. I'll just show you every now and then just out of interest. So that's what I'm doing today. So my workshop, the ToXiC Garage Workshop, has become the ToXiC Garage Timber Workshop, and that's my timber just there, all the various timbers that I'm using for mainly this, but a couple other things as well. So as I said, I'm not going to show you everything because it's really not related, but there is some processes that you use here that are no different doing metalwork. So I'm going to get started. Kookaburras are just checking out the quality of my work, making sure that I've assembled the scaffolding correctly. They're looking forward to having a pergola to hang around and enjoy life. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you look carefully you can see 2 lines just there, 2 lines just there, just there, just there, just there, and so on, down the length of timber. So what I've done, I've marked out where my rafters are going to go. So if you don't understand the parts of a pergola, hopefully it'll come together. That's where my rafters are going to go. So they're going to be timbers coming out this way. And what I'm going to be doing is just housing in to this timber about 10 mil, so nearly ½ an inch or 3/8 down into there. But I'm only going 150 mil. I'm actually doing this side. So what I'm going to be doing, the timber is going to be sitting in here because my rafters are 150 mil deep, whereas my beam that I've got here is 200 mil deep. So I'm making a housing joint that does this across this like this and goes in 10 mil. What I'm going to be using is a router. to do that. So this tool, and I've got it set to 10 millimeters deep, so the bit that you see in the middle there is sticking out 10 millimeters from the surface, and I'm going to route those areas out. But what I'm doing, I'm making a template, or a guide I should say, to use my router. So this is the area that I want to route out on my beam over here. That's the area I want to route out, but I'm making this guide this big so that I can run my router in there and I can run it around. And what the difference is from here to here is 42 millimeters, and that's to allow for the distance from this flat edge to the cutting edge of the router bit in the middle. So that's 42 millimeters from there to there. So the internal part here is 150 mil by 50 mil, because that's the size of my beam, and then I've added 42 millimeters on here and all the way around. So I've got a whole bunch of calculations over here that I've been doing to work that out. So I'm going to cut this out with my saw, and then what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll clamp this template in position over each one of these lines, and then I can run my router through, and it will contain where I'm doing, they'll be identical, and I've worked these out to the millimeter. So there's 13 gaps between each rafter. That just because I'm using 12 rafters, it's just what I decided. So the distance between here is 416 millimeters, which puts them perfectly evenly spaced right the way along the length of this beam. And yeah, so I'll go through and I'll route that and I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, so I've made that template and I've put a practice piece of board here. So this isn't the actual timber that I'm working on. And I've routed that out to about 10 mil deep. I did have to modify it a little bit. I just had to extend it a little bit through here, just to make it a bit easier to use. All I've got to do now is just square these corners up. So I could either use a hammer and chisel, or I could use my multi-tool. I could also change the bit out in my router and put a smaller radius. The one that I've got is about a 12 mil, about a 6 mil radius, but I don't want to do that. It's a bit of mucking around. The template needs to be changed to do that. So I'm using that particular bit because I only need to run through it about 4 times and it takes everything out. So I'll use my multi-tool at the moment. Chiseling this MDF wouldn't work very well anyway. So when the time comes, I'll either use my chisel or my multi-tool, but I'll show you what I mean by that. And this is the reason you do practices. No biggie, but this bit just here is bigger than what I want. I've got smaller ones, so I'll use one about half that size and then I can get right in there. It's a bit hard to maneuver this in there. I'm not going to bother finishing that off, it was just to demo it. Okay, well the first thing that's happened is that it's ripped the side out of my timber. So that's okay. Well, it's not okay, but so it's damaged this just here, which I'd prefer didn't happen. It is on the top of the timber, so that's not the end of the world, but I'd prefer it didn't happen. So I'm not going to see it. I'm going to run some saw cuts through here. I think the router is just coming in too aggressively on the edge. I'm just playing around with some different ideas here. So as you know, I started with the router. I decided to do saw cuts. You can do saw cuts and finish it all off with a chisel, which is fine, but I've got a multi-tool. So the multi-tool just makes it easier for the corners and the end. And then, as you will have seen then, I just sort of cleaned it out a bit. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to set my template back in place and run the router through. And if I've got my router set to the right depth, I should just take these saw cut lines out. And just to be clear, I set my saw to exactly 10 millimeters, and that's what my router is set to as well. So the bottom of those saw cuts should be exactly the same depth that I've got my router set to. So I'm going to do that, and this is what I'm trying to avoid, this stuff here. That actually didn't take very long at all, so maybe the method I've just done might be the way to go. The router may or may not be necessary, but if it only takes a minute or two to set up and it makes it better, then I'll do it, because I want it to be as nice as possible. It's never going to be seen again. Hey, I want it to look good. Okay, that worked really well. The only thing that happened was that my template must be about one and a half millimeters too narrow, because after I had finished going, there was still a tiny little corner in it there. So I just finished off with the chisel and multi-tool. I'm not actually even concerned about it. I don't think I'll even bother altering my template. And the reason being is that when I do the rafters, I'm going to just sort of arras the corners just a little bit anyway. So it'll fit in without any interference. And that way it just sort of avoids splintering when you're putting it together. But to give you an idea of how well that came up, this is 50 mil wide. So that's exactly how I want that to sit. So my rafters should sit in there beautifully. The reality is timber is a product that swells and contracts and so on. So on the day that I go to install it, it may be a little bit loose, it may be a little bit tight. Whatever it is what it's going to be, because it'll continue to do that throughout its life. But the idea of this, so this is the top of my beam, this is the bottom. My rafters are going to sit in, come out like this. So there will be a space on the bottom there, but they'll be flat along the top of the pergola. I'm doing it that way for a look, but also in case I ever decide to put a roof on it, because at the moment this is not going to have a roof structure on it. But if I do decide to put a roof on it, it'll make it easier if everything's level on the top. But I think it's going to look very, very nice. I'll finish all of these off on this one now. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. 18 minutes that took, if you're interested. So I'd already done one, I just did 11. Haven't finished them, obviously. Where I'm stopping, I had a pencil line that I'd drawn across here. Try and do things production line. Henry Ford, master of production lines. So I had this set to my depth. So this is a combination square. Had it set to the length of it. Just went through, just marked that out with a pencil, where each one was going. With the saw, you can see it doesn't finish the cutoff because it's rounded. When I stop at that line, it's not finished, so I've got to square that corner up, as you saw with that. So the next step, I'll go through, I'll chisel all of these out, I'll multi-tool them, and I will route them. Still undecided, I think I'm going to do the ends as well. That's the beams continue around the ends and they're full 200. I think I might put those in as well. We're still going to see the join through here, but it'll be nice here. Because what happens is that this will add strength. So the beams will be sitting, the rafters I should say, will be sitting down this way. So it'll add strength. So just by putting them there, it'll mean that the beams are taking the load of the rafters rather than screws or bolts. There will be screws or bolts in there, but the actual timber will be bearing the load rather than the hardware. But also timber expands, contracts, moves in and out as it gets wet and dry and so on. So even if it pulls out of this joint a little bit, you're still going to just see this really nice clean corner of where the timbers join, rather than a gap that forms and goes and forms and goes in the joints. Just means that it'll look nicer for all of its life rather than just when you first build it.
Do I need to go around this side?
Yeah, maybe.
Alright.
Yep.
Alright, ready?
Yep.
Lift at the back.
Go around the other side, so you're there.
Yeah, hook under there.
Ow.
Should have put your safety shoes on, Sam. You're working with a hazard.
I don't think that's his.
Hang on. Can you just hang on? I'll just get a ladder.
Yeah.
Hang on, darling, hang on.
Yeah, put it on the roll.
No, we can roll it off.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you're doing.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
You just
Yeah,
stand.
I tried lifting a leg down too for the neck loss and
Okay, you want to line it up while I'm here?
How much you need? 10 mil?
10 mil, yeah.
I can't move this for shit.
It's not man to man.
Well, for ages I've just had the posts up, and yesterday Macca and Sam and Josh gave me a hand to put the beams up after doing all that housing work to them, and I have to say it makes such a difference. I've put a coat of oil over most of it, and I think it's looking cracking. So what I'm doing now is I'm just checking everything out. Timbers have got some bows in them, so we've just got to work the bows down with clamps, so there's probably a bit of wind noise in this. What I'm just about to do is start bolting the beams onto the posts, and what I'm going to do, you can see where I haven't oiled just there for no other reason other than the clamp was there. I'm going to drill some holes, countersink in for my coach screws, and then we'll put it in there. So I'll show you the process. What I'm using is 170mm long coach screws, these guys, and they will have flat washers. But rather than come in from the front of the beam, I don't really want to see it, so I'm going to come in from the back. So what I'm doing, I'm using a bolt that will come in, a coach screw that will come in from the back, and by the time it's countersunk, it'll nearly be punched out the front. So it'll be biting into that timber by a good 55, 60 mil. But what I want to do is have it so that the head of the bolt and the washer, the screw and the washer, sit recessed into the timber like that. So I'm going to be drilling from the back, as I said, and what I'm going to be doing is using a spade bit, this one here, or a speed bore, whatever you want to call it, both names. And I've got one that is the same size or just slightly bigger than the washer that I'm using, and you'll see why in a moment. And then, so that's the first process. After marking it out, I'm going to be speed boring, and then I'm going to be using an auger to drill my holes. I've got a long one and a shorter one. They're 10mm, so these are the same size as the shaft of the screw, excluding the thread. It's a bit hard for you to see, it's a bit windy out here. So I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll do it and then I'll show you. So first things first, I'm going to set up this spade bit so that I've got an indicator on it to stop me from drilling too deep, because I only want it to be sinking in far enough for this stuff. So this thing will cut right to the end of these tips here. So I'm going to put a bit of tape around this bit just there. It's almost the end of that blue bit, isn't it? No, not quite. So I'll put a bit of tape there and you'll see what I mean. Now, I could use that painted section there as an indication as well. So what I'm going to do, just using masking tape, doesn't matter what you use, I reckon I need to put it about there. That's probably spot on. So we'll see. It might need to go a little bit deeper than that. We'll see. I'll do it at this depth. I'm suspecting I'm going to need to do it a little bit deeper. So what will happen is that once I drill the hole, once that tape is level with the surface of the timber, then I'll have my depth. But I think I'm going to need to go another 1 or 2 mil deeper. Let's see. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. I've got 2 holes there. I ended up drilling about 2 millimeters past where the blue tape is, as I suspected, because the little pointy bits on the side of the drill bit, I've realised we're not going to take out the full depth. But what we have, the nut and the washer, this is obviously back to front, but I'm trying to lose the head and the washer into the surface of the timber. So you can see there, that is exactly the right depth. So when you use this spade bit, what you end up with is that part there in the centre, which is caused by the centre of the drill bit. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm also going to get my auger bit, that other drill bit, got to mark it with blue tape to the depth that I want, and I'm going to drill straight through the centre of these holes, through my post and into my rail, and my beam I should say, while I've got it all clamped in place. Nothing will move, everything will be tight against each other, and I'll run that through. I'm going to lubricate my drill bit because this is hardwood and it's very dense, and then when I go to put the screw in, I'm also going to be lubricating it. I'm going to be using lanolin, which is a sheep wool extract. It'll help to lubricate it, and it will help to seal the hole to prevent rot later on as well. So let's set the drill up with the other drill bit and drill the hole. Okay, this is going to be exactly the same principle. So put some tape on the ready, and I'm simply going to mark how deep I want to go. So I want to go to the underside of that washer and to the end of the screw. Sorry, camera's blowing around a bit here. So I'm just going to tape that. Right there. And I want to ensure that I don't go any deeper than that, because I'll pop out the other side of that beam. That won't make me happy. In fact, I need to make it shorter. No, I don't. I need to be very careful of this. This is going to be very, very close. Okay, let's drill a hole. Will you just look at that sky? Okay, so this is the stuff I'm using. Lanagard. Why? Because I had it. It's Lanatech. I like lanolin. This just happens to be it. This is a grease substitute. So all I'm going to do in the first place is dip my drill bit in there. It'll spin off the drill a little bit in the first place, but that'll just help to lubricate, which might make the drilling a little bit easier and not damage my drill bit. So hopefully you'll be able to see there. I might zoom you in a little bit. Long drill bit, might have to stand back a bit. Now the key here is to keep this thing as straight as possible, as level as possible. So what I don't want to do is try and put the coach screw in there without drilling this hole, because I will snap the head off the coach screw, because the timber is so dense there is no way it is going to allow that screw to go in there without me pre-drilling. it will just overheat, snap, and I will be in a world of pain. I don't want that. Out of curiosity, how deep is this? You know, that is not far off. Okay, so I'm just going to be using my Milwaukee 1/2 inch impact driver to drive this in. Now I should be using an impact socket, so a black socket, but I don't have one in 18mm, which is what this bolt is. So I do have a 12 point in 18mm, so that's what I'm using. Got to lubricate it and hopefully put it in there without any problem. I'll just do the bottom one, that should hold the whole beam in place, and all will go well. Fingers crossed. I'm over dramatising this obviously because this shouldn't be all that hard, but I don't want anything to go wrong, so you want it to be good. Just got to make sure that washer goes in properly. Now that's got a bit of resistance, which is concerning because when it gets hot, it can fail. So I'm going to take it back out. I'm certainly not going to hold it. See, what's happening is all the swath from the screw is stuck in there and it's stopping it from doing up. So all this stuff here. So I'm going to sit that there. I'm not going to touch it because it'll be very hot. I'm just going to get something and just try and clean that out a little bit. Maybe a screwdriver, some bit of wire or something. But bear with me, I'll be back. I've just got myself a bit of fencing wire. I've just made myself a little tool. And all it is a bit of fencing wire with a handle and a little hook on the end of it. I'm just going to pop that in the hole and try and scrape it out. Now again, if I seem like I'm being overcautious, I am, because this is very expensive timber for starters, and secondly, that beam that's holding in place weighs over 200 kilo, and if I need to take it down, I'm not going to be able to. I might be able to get it to fall, which I don't want to. I'm not going to be able to get it back up again, and I'd just like to build this pergola. So, apart from which, I don't like things failing when I'm trying to do them. So I will take the precautions. Once I've learnt my method, then the process should speed up. But it may still just be a slow process. But what I think is that that swath couldn't get out. Now I'm tempted to just run the drill bit through again. I don't want to damage the threads in the timber. I am tempted to run it through again. Just make it a fraction deeper than it is. So I'll do that carefully, trying not to damage the threads that I've just put in from the screw. The thread should be on the outside of the hole that I drilled anyway. And as I said, I certainly don't want to go through the other side of the timber. Blow that one out. No hole on the other side, so that's a good thing. Righto, that screw should have cooled down a bit by now. And believe me, they get hot. Clean some of this off. Put a bit more lubricant on it. And go for gold. Okay, that is done up. I'm going to do it that tight and I'm going to nip it up with just a socket on a spanner or something, on a ratchet, but that is exactly what I'm after. I will bring you in closer to see what I mean. Righto, so that's what we look like. Just got to clean the lanolin off it. Now, if I wanted to go a step further, I could have sunk these in further and then made a wooden plug to go over the top of this so you don't see the hardware at all. But I'm not. Okay, that's about as tight as that needs to be. So there is a flat washer in there, and what happens is this screw, this coach screw, it's got coarse thread, it has gone into my beam and it's pulled the beam back towards the post because of the clamping pressure. I've got the bolt of the screw going in, the flat washer, so it can't pull into the timber there, and it's literally just pulling that beam back into the housing joint in the post here. So it's clamping it nice and tight. So the bolt, all it's doing is stopping the timber from falling off. All of the load of that timber, the weight of it is sitting on that housing joint. Now you can see an air gap underneath there. It is contacting the housing joint. Isn't perfectly square. It is contacting, and that is where the load is being held. So all I got to do is do that about another 25 times. So you stay tuned and you watch me do that 25 times, or don't, because I'm not going to film it. Well, that's those two done. They've come up well, so I just need a coat of oil between them, and I'll probably put a bit of oil on the bolt heads as well. It'll just take the shine off them a little bit. So as far as set out goes, what I did there, the beam, so this piece of timber here, is 200 mil high, or 8 inches. So I came down, so 800, spit it out, Todd, 200 mil. So I've divided that into 4. I've come down 50 mil for the top bolt, and then another 50 mil to halfway of the timber, another 50 mil down to the next bolt, and then 50 mil down to the bottom. So what that means is that the bottom bolt is 1/4 of the way up the timber, and the top bolt is 1/4 of the way down the timber. So it's clamping it evenly, so it's not going to warp, bow, twist, and all that sort of stuff. On these, and the piece of timber that it's going onto is 130 mil wide because I've housed out 70 mil. Whereas in the middle post just here, the middle post's 200 mil wide, and I'm going to go halfway between the sides. So what I'm doing is I've just set my combination square. You could use a tape measure or a rule or whatever you wanted, but just set my combination square, and I'll show you down low. So set that to halfway, which is 100 mil. So if I hold that there, then you can see halfway is just there somewhere, and I could put a pencil mark. It's a bit hard with one hand, but if I wanted to check that I was halfway, I can hold it in the other side, and if the spot lines up on the pencil mark, then it's exactly halfway, and if not, I can adjust my combination square one way or the other. So I'm going to find halfway, down the middle there, and then I'm going to come down 50 mil and up 50 mil and press repeat for what I did over there. Look at that blue sky. Okay, so that's all good, but what I have is the beam that I'm trying to fasten to, not the post, but the beam is sprung up a little bit. So there's a gap below it here. Now, if I can't do it one hand, I can actually pull that down. Not one-handed, I can't. But what I need to do is have it in place while I'm drilling the holes. Otherwise, if I drill the holes through into this, then I will be drilling the hole, holding this up above where I want it. So I need to pull it down into place, drill the hole through, so that when I put the screw in, it actually holds the beam where I want it rather than where I don't want it, which will be up too high. So I'm standing on a ladder with a camera trying to show you this, so it's a little bit hard. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a screw in the top of my post, and then using my pinch bar, that guy with the yellow on it, I'll show you, I'm going to get it and I'm just going to lever the beam down while I'm screwing it, drilling it. So let's see how that goes, eh? I wonder if I can set you up on a camera to show you this while I'm up here. Good. Okay, and that's the second one done. The process is much faster after doing the first sample. I'm happy with that. I did, however, just punch tiny little holes out the back, one there and one there, just with my drill bit. But you know what? I don't care, because no one's ever going to know, other than everyone that I just showed. So we've only got the rest of them to do. And I promise I will stop calling you back in now. But what I did do to pull that beam down, I put a screw in the beam. I used my pinch bar, this guy, and just levered that down. There wasn't a lot of resistance, and then I was able to put the clamp in and go from there. And now it's held into the right place. I think it's time for a drink. Righto, so they're all done. Just looking at this where that shadow is, how nice does that look there with the end of the beam and the post, the shadow line and the arris all coming through on the same. It's that really boxy cubic look I'm going for. So as I said, I got all those done, all good, everything went as planned. This one here, because I accidentally did my housing, so those little notches, on the wrong side of the post, as in I meant to house everything on this edge rather than that edge, because the timber had a bow in it. And what I mean by that is that the timber was bowed like that, and that's the way I should have done it, so that it installed that way. Unfortunately, I had it like that. So what that means, and I think I've explained this before, that one over there had a bow. I was able to just pull the middle down. So I had the full length of it to give me the flex to pull it down. Whereas this one I did technically upside down because the bow was going that way. So what it meant was that I was able to fix that side, was able to fix that side, and then this side I had to pull down, and I had to pull it down 50 mil, maybe more, say 2 inches. And and I only had half the length of the timber to have my leverage effect, as opposed to the way I did it on the other side. So what I did was I just got a block of timber, big wide bit of timber, and clamped it as tight as I could to the side of the post to get as much surface area, contact area as possible. Then I got my ratchet strap, just slung it over and ratcheted it down. And to be completely honest, it was super easy. I didn't know whether the timber would hold. I didn't know whether the ratchet strap would slip. Neither happened, which was great. So I clamped it in place. Once it was clamped in place, then I was able to drill it, screw it, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to leave the ratchet straps there for a little while because I actually just want the timber, when I say a little while, I might leave it there for a day or two. I want the timber to just sort of allow its fibres to stretch, to rest in that place rather than have to be held down. So I don't want a chance snapping the screws or something like that. But once it is rested in that place, it will be absolutely fine. I can now take some accurate measurements to work out the length of my rafters from side to side, so inside of the housing to inside of the housing, dock those to length, and then they're going to just slide down into those grooves. I do have to make my beams as well, the two end beams, so I think I've said before this is 70mm thick by 200, whereas the rafters that I'm using are 50mm thick by 150. So these end ones will be the same dimension as the front beams to give that solid cubic look that I'm looking for, right the way around. And then the rafters on the inside will just be a little less bulky, but they'll be bulky nevertheless. I didn't ever mean that to sound like that. And I've put them quite close together. They're spaced out at 416mm apart because that makes them even right the way through, which will give a real roof feeling to it, but still be open. Should give pretty good shade when the sun's in a particular place as well. So I'm going to take some measurements, and I think I can probably start cutting to size and sanding my beams. That's going to take a while because I really haven't started preparing any of that yet. But I'm very, 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 very happy with that. I've gone through and just prepared the holes, so just done the countersinking part on all of the posts, and I have also just gone through and put some nail plates on top of all the posts just to stop them splitting on the ends. Just a preventative measure. Well, while I'm cutting some more timbers, we've got the beauty queen out here oiling them. Look at that, in the dark. Well, we've been making really good progress with the pergola, but I was putting the other beam up on the other end, so we've put the one up on this end, and it started raining, so I decided to come into the garage. I haven't finished my rafters yet, so we're working on those. So these 5 here, they're getting wet, but that's okay. They have been cut to length, and they've been oiled twice. I think Davina's oiled those, so I'm not really worried about them sitting in the weather. The one that I've got laying flat's got a bit of a bow in it, so I've got it sitting that way to try and get it to drop down in the middle. The others aren't too bad. I've got 5 left here that I haven't cut at all or done anything to yet, and then I've got 3 here that I'm working on at the moment. So what's going to be happening, so I've cut them to length, sanded them, and now I'm about to put a housing in them through this area for my blocking. Now I'll show you what I mean by that. So the blocking will be off-cut pieces of timber. They're not actually off-cuts, they're about this long, 416mm I think they are. This isn't one of them, but it is an example. So what I'm going to be doing is taking a 10mm trench out through here, so about 10mm deep, and then the timber that I'm using for the blocking is actually 75mm thick, unlike the rafters, which is only 50mm thick. Why? Because I've got some 75 and I don't have any 50. But it is only the same height. So ideally I'd be using 150 by 50, but I don't have it. So I do have some 150 by 75. This is a 200 by 75, so it'll just be wider through here. But what's going to happen is that blocking will go in one side, and then it'll go in the other side as well. So if I show you with this, if this is my rafter, blocking will be coming in one side, and then I'll be putting a housing in the other side, and that'll be like that. And the reason being, I can put some screws through here to hold this block in place, some screws through there to hold this block in place. And what the blocking does, it sits between the rafters, from rafter to rafter to rafter to rafter. And the idea of it is that it stops the rafters from twisting through the middle or bowing through the middle, which will happen. And that is just a fact. Over a length like that, which these are 2.675 millimeters long, meters long, I should say, they will twist. So the blocking will go through like that, be fixed in one side and the other side. So one block will go like that, the next block will be offset to it, down like that, obviously down lower. So that way I can get screws into each of them, and that will stop the rafters from twisting or bowing. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So what I've done, I've laid these 3 timbers. If I had all 12 ready, I'd do that, but I haven't. So I'm just working on a small number of them in the first place. Line them all up. This is the dead center. No, it's not. That's the dead center of the timber. That's 1337 mil from that end, 1337 mil from that end. That's the dead center. Then I've marked out 75 mil, which is the thickness of the blocking that I'm going to be using. And I've marked that out. I'm going to do that to all 12 rafters on one side, and then on the opposite side, so on the back of this, I'll be putting a trench through on that side. So it'll reduce the thickness of this rafter down to 40 mil at that point, but then when I flip it over here, it'll be 40 mil there. So I'm only taking 10 mil off at any point in time. It's not going to affect the strength. In fact, it'll make it much stronger with the blocking. So I'm just going to use a circular saw, run through here, set to a depth of 10 mil. I'll do one at a time rather than all of them, because there is a little bit of height difference because of the way they're sitting. So I'm just going to run a series of cuts, and I may even just do the whole lot with a circular saw, but if I need to clean it up with a chisel or something like that, I will. But I should be able to just run the circular saw through multiple times and do the minor little bit of cleanup just by gliding a chisel over it. So let's get those done. It's good to see some rain. So what we have here is I've done all 3 of those pieces of timber, and I've just loosely got that piece of 50 mil blocking sitting in there to show you the idea. As I said, I'm using 75 mil timber, hence why it's too wide. It's just sitting there. That's why it's sitting a bit low. So if I was to tap that, it'd fall down. But I've got that one, and then you can see these 2 slots just here line up. So once these rafters are moved apart, another timber will go in there. So I can fix screws into that one from there, and then I'll be able to fix screws into there. So every rafter will have a housing there and a housing there, so offset to each other for that reason. And I'll stagger that right the way across, so you can see the way they're positioned there. There'll be 2 on that end, and then 2 on this end, 2 on that end, and so on. So it's only the 2 end rafters I need to make sure I get right, so it all lines up right. But that'll become more evident. But just to reiterate, this is the center line of the rafters just here, and the blocking is either on the right, as we are, or on the left of that center line. So it will come up nicely. And once again, the reason I like to house it in there is that it gives a nicer finish to the edge of the joint once it's there. Timber does shrink and expand and so on, and that is just a fact. So you can see here that that's a nice clean joint in there, and even if this timber shrinks a little bit in length or even in width, it's still got to look like a nice neat joint. Whereas if the timber, let's use this piece for example, if the timber sits like that, then as soon as it shrinks a little bit, then you can see the gap open up along this line here. So it's just to give it a cleaner line, but also it makes for a stronger structure. It's just a fair bit of work, but that's okay. Okay, once again the sun is out and we have got a whole bunch of rafters ready. We've got 4 left to go, got 8 done. So what I've done is gone through and I've marked out where the rafters are going to sit on the other side. So up here I have gone through and I transferred the mark across through the middle, the center of it here, and then I transferred it down the face and put those X's. And what I've come 30mm down the rafter and 30mm up from the bottom of the rafter, which leaves those at about 90mm apart, which will be just fine. So I'm going to countersink with a clever bit so that when I go to fix the rafters in, then the bugle screws that I'm using will be flush with the surface, and I've pre-drilled. So the pre-drill that I'm using is only about 40mm long, so I've got a longer drill bit that I'm going to chase through the hole once the rafters are in place. So I'm just doing the marking, doing the pre-drilling, countersinking, then when we sit the rafters in, we'll drill through with a longer drill bit, and then we can drive the bugle head screws in. The ones we are using are ToXiC bit head, so have that star shape in them, so you can get some pretty good impact on those and drive them in. These are 125mm long, and what that'll do, that'll go 70mm through our timber and 50 or so, probably go about 55mm into the end of our rafter, which I'll be happy with. So I'm going to go through and drill 24 holes, and then the next step after that is that we can start installing our rafters once they're dry. We do need to go through and give everything another sand, get some marks off and so on. Only given this one coat of oil so far, just to preserve it and get some oil on before we make it too hard for ourselves to paint. But the rafters that Davina's doing, she has put 2 or 3 coats on those because they're going to be difficult to get to afterwards, because there's only a 416mm gap there, so squeezing up between there and leaning over the top to paint them would not be any fun. So we'll get plenty of oil on them now. We're using decking oil, by the way. Cabot's water-based. Okay, yeah, and this is the bit. So what it does, it drills a hole, which is the right size for my 14 gauge bugles, right diameter. It's not obviously long enough, as I said. And then it's got this bit on the end there that countersinks, drills a countersink for that head to go into. And this thing stops it from going too far. So I'll give you a demo. Okay, currently standing on a ladder, holding a phone, drilling a hole with a power tool. Try that again. So it doesn't matter how hard I push, I can't get that in too far. And you can actually adjust the depth of that on this particular tool so that you can sink the head in further or less. Now, this is hardwood, so it's a little bit hard to push in single-handed, and also I need to take the drill bit out and let the sawdust come out in between, so I can't just do one hole, one push and expect it to go. I've got to put it in, take it out, put it in. So I've got to go through and do a bunch of those. Pretty neat looking hole though. You'll see what it looks like when the bugles are in there, once it's time to put the bugles in there. Okay, got those holes done on both sides, ready to go. Got 3 rafters ready to put in, so let's do it. Built this little stable for Eddie the other day. There's just a shed that was unused, so we put up a bit of a picket fence for him and some rails, just so that he's not giving the goats too much grief in their space. Got to finish doing other bits, but it's looking pretty good. Working away bit by bit. It is raining again today. I'm doing this over a period of days if you haven't already worked that out, but it can be sunny in the morning and then raining in the afternoon and then sunny again later on, so that's the way it is. I've got 8 of the rafters up. Why haven't I done 12? Because I just haven't done the other 4 yet, but I'll get to those. So you can see the 8 that are there, and I've started doing my blocking. So this is what I've been talking about with the offset. So you can see those two. The center line is right there, and that's where they're going through. And I'm just putting a single bugle screw. They're actually stainless steel 100mm ones because that's what I had. You might see a theme here. And just putting one in there. The reason being is that these things, they can't go anywhere. They can't fall up, can't fall down, because they're squashed between those other timbers. So these bugle screws will stop them going anywhere at all. Now, the idea of the blocking, as I've said multiple times, is to take out twisting or prevent twisting and bowing and warping and so on the timbers. A million birds flying over my head. And what I have probably pointed out also is some of these timbers are bowed when I'm putting them in there. So the blocking doesn't fit in straight away. But I have worked out the measurement. 416 edge to edge, and then 10mm housing. So each one of these timbers is 436. I'm actually doing it about 434, 435, because they never fit quite perfectly. So you might lose a bit of a mil here and a bit of a mil there. So I've got a block cut here, haven't tried it yet. And what I do, I push it up into the gap. I know, I've measured this, these timbers are bowed. I'd say this one is bowed in, because these ones should be okay. So I just need to get up there and push them out. And what I do is I just stand in between them and push it out with my shoulders, pop the block in place, and then when I release, it'll spring back in. Of course, if it's bowed the other way, then it's not going to do that. It's not going to hold in place. I have these clamps here as well. So I run the clamps just to locate the bottom, because the top, there's a little bit of variance in thickness, so I don't really mind if the top's a little bit different, but I like the bottom to be so that the timbers are flush with each other. So then I put that that sash clamp across, and it pulls the timbers in. So it's just a big clamp. It's a really old-fashioned thing. I picked it up years ago for $5 from a scrap metal place because it's mainly timber, and the guy really didn't care. And it's a classic old thing. I don't know how old it is or how many things it's built, but I love it. So yeah, I'm going to put you on the tripod so you can actually see what I'm talking about here. Full disclosure, I went to fit the block up there and it was too tight on that side. So what I did, I went away and I just planed a bit off the edge there just to make it fit. The timber sort of is fatter in the middle than it is on the sides. So it was just a bit hard to get in. I couldn't get it in. So I took that away and planed it. I'll show you in a little while how I've set my plane up to do that. But let's get this timber in. Well, as it turns out, sooner rather than later I'm showing you this because the other side didn't fit either. That's okay, good opportunity. So I have my planer. I'm going to unplug it so I don't cut my finger off. This is my planer, pardon me, electric planer. So I have the blades obviously just here. And what I've done, I've just set this guide up so that I'm only cutting with the last about 10mm of the blade. So if this was my piece of timber, as it goes along, only that part of the blade right there is cutting. So what I've done, I've just put this to 0.3 of a millimetre, so I only need to trim a little bit off. And I'm just going to run through it and take a little bit off. Now what I do find is when I pop out the other side, it does tend to splinter the timber a little bit. It's a bit hit and miss, so sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see whether it does this time or not, and if it does, I'll just sand it. Earmuffs on, please. Always a good idea to control your planer right towards the end of the cut. But anyway, and you can see just there that I've just taken off the slightest little bit. I'm just going to give that a sand up. Once that's oiled up and everything, and that's actually in the joint, that'll be unnoticeable. And I'm putting it at the back of the visibility line so that it's not really going to be in your face. And there we have another block in. Now you can see where I've routed the edges off, so I planed the edges off that. I could probably set my planer in just a couple of mil and make it nearly invisible. I'm not particularly concerned, but I might just adjust my planer anyway. But you can see how snugly all that fits together there, which is the plan. And this thing is now really, really, really strong through the middle there. And as you can see, it adds a bit more substance to the roof as well. I could park a car on top of this thing. Don't even tempt me. So the reason I didn't start from this end and work my way along is that even though the beam is one of the most structural members, it's actually got a pretty substantial bow in it. And I figured that if I could get these square to each other first, then I can get that in now. It's going to be really hard for me to push the bow out of that, but now that I've got these three working with each other, I can put something between these, whether it be a hydraulic jack or something like that, and push this out with the base of the jack up against that, or whatever else I can use, but a hydraulic jack's the first thing that comes to mind, and push them apart, and then pop the next block in, and then once the block's in there, then these should hold that in place. That's my logic. But I'm not even going to rush into that end one. I'm going to keep working through the middle because I have the same issue on the beam on this end. For whatever reason, the end beam's a little bit hard to show you, but this end beam does have a bow in it. So I'll just keep working through the middle, working my way up along here. Once I've got these rafters in, I'll do the same, and then I'll put that end one and the other end one in very last, and I'm pretty sure that everything will just come together lovely. Now, if I was to measure, let's see if I can get a tape measure off, we should be 416 mil between our rafters at that point there, and we are, what do we got? It's about 418 on that one. I can take a mil or two here or there, and on this one we've got 416 right on the money. So a mil here, mil there is not going to be noticeable. It'll all still look square, and essentially it'll be square, and I think it's coming together very nicely. As the rain decides to join us one more time, what I've got here is I've got these blocks in through here. These two rafters appear too close together. They're not. It's just that this one here has a big bow through the middle of it. A bit hard to pick up on the camera, I think, but which one are we? This one here. It's actually got a big bow, so it's going banana shaped like that. And it's about 20 mil. So this measurement between these notches is supposed to be 436 mil or 435. And at the moment I've got 420 and I've already got it pushed out about 5 mil. So what you can see here, I've got a bottle jack. And all I'm going to do is pump it. This isn't going anywhere. With all that blocking, it's not going anywhere. I just need to move this one across about 15 mil and then I can drop my block in. Mere minutes later, measuring the other way now because I can hold the tape measure that way, I've pushed this out to 438. Should be enough, but if I need another couple of mil, I'll put it in there. And then once it's in there, I can back that jack off and it'll close up on it and it'll be doing exactly as it's supposed to be, stopping these things from twisting. I've got about half of the blocks installed. I've got these 5 ready to go. So they're all the same length, same dimension. I've just been planing the corner off them because it just seems to be what I need to do with them all. And I was 1 block short, and I knew this early on. I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to deal with it, but this is an offcut off my beam. So my beams, as I've explained before, are 200 deep, whereas my rafters are only 150, and so is my blocking, this stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this to length first, but then once I've done that, I'm going to plane off 50 mil, so about this far. I'm going to take all of that off with my planer. I could use a circular saw, but this timber's so hard that I've already burnt out a couple of blades on a bigger saw, and I'm actually having the most success on my little 185 mil saw. Cutting it, I got a good blade and it just seems to be working well, so I don't want to go burning out another blade. When I say burning out, like it just turns black and goes blunt. So that blade's working well. It's good for a cross cut. But ripping a timber down this direction is a completely different kettle of fish. So that would absolutely destroy my blade, and I probably wouldn't be able to cut it straight. The blade would get that hot, it'd warp and it'd go all over the place. These are the things that happen. So after I've cut it to length, I'm going to plane down 50 mil off it to make it so that it's only 150 mil thick. But what I thought I'd also show you is that I'm squaring these up pretty much perfectly on the end. And what I'm doing is, rather than just using a small square and coming and dropping it down the side like this, I'm using the biggest square. This is a square, by the way. This is a builder's square or a roofing square. This is a set square. There's all sorts of different squares. It's talking about this being a 90-degree angle. I use the largest square I can on the piece of timber, and I make it so that this edge is straight along here. Now, why this matters is that this timber might have some waviness in the side. In fact, it does, or it could have some curvature. If you do it over a long distance, then whatever you cut off here is going to be a representation of the squarest corner you can get on the best average straight edge that you can get. So go through here, square it up that way, then I square down this way, square down that way, and when I cut, I make sure that I've followed all those pencil lines. Now, I'm cutting these at 435, 434 mil long. You could go along and go like this and put a pencil mark here, move down here and do a pencil mark. But the issue is that if this is even 0.5 millimeter out of square, so like that, then if I do that measurement, it'll be the same. And if one end's going to be out of square, then okay, it'll be a little bit out of square, but I'd prefer that both aren't, because if I am trying to cut something that long and I manage to cut it that long, it is actually now longer on both ends than what I needed, and it won't sit square. So I still need it to be the same length, and even if one of them's a little bit out of square, then from this point here, the timber will still be 434, 435 mil long rather than 436, 437 from this point to that point. So why am I mentioning that? I cut this, measure down just one end, put a mark there, and then square it across. So the same principle as earlier. And that way these two ends will be parallel to each other, square, and they will be exactly square off the average of the side. So got to cut this to length. Going to choose which side I want to take off, mark 50mm, then I'm going to use my power planer and I'm going to plane that off. That's going to be very noisy and really messy. There is going to be sawdust shavings or planing twirls, whatever you call them, everywhere. And I'll show you that. Planers are great tools. They're noisy and messy. Well, I did promise I was going to make a lot of sawdust. All of that is just from taking 50mm off the edge of this. But now I have another 150 by 75 timber. And that is the last one I need. Actually, this isn't the one I did. The one below it is the one I did. Well, just when you think you're nearing the end of it, you discover that the very last two pieces of timber you pick up out of your pile are too short. This piece and this piece are about 200mm shorter than what they needed to be. I ordered 2.8s. Most of them came out as slightly longer than 2.8, which is great, but the offcut is still no use to me. So it's not like I can glue the piece off that one on the end of that one. But that one there and that one there, even though I've sanded them, are now totally useless to me. So I've just contacted the timber supplier, which I have to say have been very helpful in the past, because they did have an issue with another piece of timber that I ordered. So that's got to delay me, and it's not going to delay me 5 minutes. Well, it's a couple of days later and the weather's changed 28 times in that time. I haven't done anything more to the pergola, but I do have good news. I sent that email the other day about the timbers, and I came home a day and a half later and this was sitting there. So this is 2 replacement pieces. As it turns out, they happen to be milling some timber in the same dimensions in the same timber. Now, as you might see from the piece next to it, it's a distinctly different colour. That's one of the things about ironbark timber, is that it can come out in a variety of different colours. Reds, creamy sort of colours, and greys. So that's the only downside, is that that timber is a distinctly different colour, but it is here. So I need to come up with a solution how I can make it look right, and I can work ahead. What I do want to do, I'm going to leave it for a little while. So this video is going to end in a minute, because I'm not going to be putting those timbers up. I want them to weather a bit. They will grey up just by sitting. I'm going to leave them outdoors in the weather, but I'm going to sit things on them, heavy things on them, so they don't warp and twist. And what I'm hoping is that they'll grey up somewhat, and then I can coat them with some decking oil, like I have done with this, and hopefully they will be somewhat unnoticeable. There is colour variations in the timber that I've got here, even in this one piece of timber here. You can see the variation. So if I had them earlier, I could have intermingled them, not put them right next to each other, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So this is where I'm up to. So a little bit of a progress. What's going to happen, I've got to finish my brick edging up around here. We were going to put all gravel in around here. I'm actually thinking I might pave it now in some type of stone, in maybe a French pattern. So I'll let you know what I do, and I'll probably show you what I do. At the end of the pergola here, this ugly fence is not going to remain here. This is just a temporary measure, but we will have our carport extension over here. and we will have a joining walkway out of the same timbers between the pergola and the carport. We're going to have our barbecue located on this end of our pergola, and we'll probably put some screening timbers up across the top and maybe a few rows along the back there, just to give us a little bit of privacy and just that sense of space. And we're going to make our gate. We're going to use that gate, cut those posts to size. We'll probably have a rail along the top, and we're still trying to work out exactly what the fence is going to look like, but it may be a timber slatted fence through here, just in this area. This yard is just specifically somewhere we can put our dogs in a short term. So you can see the other landscaping that's taking place around here. And another thing that we're discussing is that we're probably going to build a carport in the same theme as this over here, specifically for ToXiC. So it'll be like an awning, like a lean-to type thing, probably 3 posts, 1, 2, 3, open on the sides, open front and back, just with a roof coming out as a carport, but also to create some shade for my workshop on that side to cool it down, and also so I've got a bit of an undercover outdoor area to do things like washing a car, for example. So it's all work in progress. So I hope that you enjoyed what I have been showing you as far as the pergola goes, and I'm happy to keep giving you updates on this. I may throw an update into some of my regular car videos. I may do something like this and do videos specifically about what it is that I'm working on outdoors. Speaking of which, I'm going to go indoors because it's really glary out here, and we'll do that. So I'll keep you updated. I know this is completely different content to what you're used to. The reality is, this is what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. And as you'll see from this video, it's actually been going on for months, but I've been really concentrating on it the last couple of weeks. But if you're one of my regular viewers that come to watch me working on rusty old piles of junk and turning them into something beautiful, I think they're beautiful, then keep joining me, because we'll definitely be getting into more of that. But if you're specifically here for the pergola, I appreciate it. Why don't you hang around and see what else I do around this place, because I think it's interesting, and so do a couple of thousand people. So stay safe. Until I see you next, go and pick up a circular saw and cut something. Whatever you do, do it safely. I'm Todd. See you later.